Okay, well, welcome everybody to this ASME bite-sized session entitled Developing a Sense of Belonging for Learners in a Changing Modality. It's really nice to welcome you here today. We're looking forward to some interesting discussions and some fantastic content from our hosts. My name's Sonia Bussey. I'm the chair for the ASME Special Interest Group for multidisciplinary educators. So I'm the representative from ASME today chairing the session. For the people who are actually doing the work, Susie, Schofield and Mandy, Moffat. In terms of introducing these good people to yourselves, Susie has a background in education and technology and joined the medical school at Dundee in 2006 as a staff development officer, supporting consultants involved in the delivery of Dundee's MBCHB. In 2009, she became a lecturer at Dundee's Centre for Medical Education, leading the move of the Distance Learning Masters in Medical Education to online in 2010 and cohorted model in 2015 as a Deputy Programme Director. Her research interests are faculty development and online education, and in 2018 she was seconded for half her role as the university's distance learning lead. Through this, she ensured equity for distance learners in all areas of the university, not just educationally, which turned out to be very well timed. Next month, she will be handing over the role as she combines her CME roles with Associate Dean for Quality and Assurance. Moving on to Mandy Moffat. Mandy's background originally is in psychology in 2000 and as a PhD Health Sciences Research in 2005. She's been involved in medical education alongside her PhD time, and with more educational involvement in teaching and research, moved to medical education full-time in 2010, with key roles in staff development. She's been in Dundee now for 4 years as part of the CME and the Masters in Medical Education programme, with module lead roles in faculty development, leadership and curriculum planning. She's also lead for induction and support for the large number of sessional tutors on the programme. With the AME offices being in Dundee, she's also editor for the monthly MedEd World newsletter, and MedEd World is one of the AME initiatives. We're really looking forward to our session today. I'd like to take this opportunity to hand over to Susie and Mandy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm in charge of the slides. So
I'm not trusted.
Share. So we're going to talk about developing a sense of belonging for learning in a changing modality. And for that, it's essentially, I think, for many people moving to online, pivoting to online or more blended. And we're hoping to share some of our experiences from our Masters in Medical Education programme. Which we have one master's programme which is entirely online. So it's sharing some of the learning points that we've had over the years and whether these can then be adapted for your own circumstances. Susie, do you want to do the...
Yeah, so by the end of this webinar, you should be able to consider the benefits and challenges of developing a sense of belongingness in your students online, reflect on aspects of your normal approach. You know, we're all very used to teaching face-to-face on campus. What do we need now to consider as we move to this new normal, as we put in inverted commas, going forward? And I think, you know, we have all found certain things that we're thinking, oh yes, we'll hold on to that as we do go forward. And we'll reflect on the gaps in your current approach and identify ways to address these. So a little bit about us. We've actually heard a bit about us from Sonia. So online teaching, both of us. I do like to try new teaching techniques, distance learning lead, and I'm an overall enthusiast, but I am technically challenged at times.
Yeah, and yeah, I want to just maybe admit that I feel like I've downloaded about 40% of my life to virtual communities a long time ago, well before this year happened. So a lot of what we'll draw on here as well when we talk about our master's programme, if you want to find any more information out about that, we've got the link in there as well. So feel free to go in and have a look and have a nosy.
So we do have our standard ground rules here, and I see that you're all very clued up. I mean, goodness, we have so many meetings now, don't we, on Zoom, Teams, Collaborate. So at the moment, yes, audio off and ask questions via the chat. And as already been mentioned, Sonia and I are looking at the chat. And we've discovered sometimes it's possible to write on slides when you're not supposed to as participants. So we ask, don't write on the slides until invited to, and we will be role modeling some of the things that we do, so there will be chance and there will be a recording of the session available together with a copy of slides after. Okay, so first, for a little bit of fun, gosh, yes, how many of us in our faculty development and indeed with our students used to use Lego? I wonder if we'll be doing that again in the classroom. And of course, you know what, one of the things that Mandy and I really like to do is to think, okay, what were the essence of the things that we did in that face-to-face classroom that we would like to take into our online teaching. So these slides, next couple of slides were prepared by Heather Gibson, who I worked with on the Sense Belonging Quality Assurance funded project, which we'll be talking about. And she had all these Lego characters to hand. Next slide, please, Mandy. Mm-hmm. And so actually now as faculty, we'd just like you to think, which one do you identify of these 10 characters as faculty? And just put up the number and why in the chat. And I'll start off by saying I see myself as number 5, even though he does look scary like Boris. And the reason I am attracted to 5 is the stars. And I just think my faculty are just amazing. And the stars, I just want to give them all stars and really congratulate on them on the huge job. We do tend to focus sometimes on the negatives, so of what we haven't managed to do, but they're, you know, just amazing students as well. So Hoda is saying she's that missing Lego with students. Yeah, I think quite a lot of us use Lego, don't we? And Lakshmi is number 8. So I think that was the one you picked, wasn't it, Mandy? Why did you pick number 8?
I think originally I quite like the Viking heroine. Been watching too much of Vikings, I think, on is it Amazon Prime?
Yeah. Would people also just like to say why? I mean, Sonia's put number 10, surrounded by dogs and spending as much time outside as possible. And it was a glorious sunny morning here in Dundee. A few clouds arriving. Oh,
that's me.
Ah, yes.
Thought I would annotate it. You can also do that with these slides. I think everyone should be able to annotate the slides if they want to draw on it.
So Sheba thinks number 7. I've heard someone else say number 7 for cutting through the red tape, and Kim number 5. What's number 5? Ah, yes, the stars again. And Sarah James at 10, wishful thinking. Hoda, yeah. Yes, I mean, my 2 dogs, well, they're out with the dog walker today, but I have very much enjoyed having the company of the dogs. I don't know how they're going to be when I go back to work full time. I mean, I am working full time. Sorry, I said that wrong, didn't I? But you know what I mean. And number 8, battling. Yes, quite a battle on. And number 6 for Paul, looking dapper, and caffeine. Yes, we're all in need of caffeine and hoping for that key. So great. Okay, thanks, Mandy.
No, okay, let's see if we can get to the next slide. So this is when we were first thinking about belongingness, and quite often we talk a lot about belongingness. And in terms of definitions, I think we've all got an idea of what belongingness means for us, in terms of maybe it comes up with images, maybe there's feelings that are associated with what you think of as belongingness, and maybe there's sounds that come to mind when you're thinking of belongingness. So we just wanted to invite you to spend a few moments thinking about what belongingness means for you as a person, as an educator.
And if we go on to the next slide, we are now going to invite you to write on the slides.
No, we're doing small groups first.
Oh, sorry. Apologies.
So now that you've had a think about what a sense of belongingness is, we want to invite you into small groups of about five or six, and to meet others on the webinar. Introduce yourself if you don't know each other. I recognise some of the people coming in, but you might not all know each other. And have a discussion around what does sense of belongingness mean for you, and compare and decide as a group if you can come up with 3 words or a short phrase for belongingness. So identify who might be the scribe in your group. There we go. So I hope you had the chance to have some interesting conversations, maybe get to know each other a little bit better. And now, so in your groups, our next stage, we would want to invite you to share some of the discussions, but also the 3 keywords or the short phrase that you've decided on. So for those of you that have got the latest Zoom, you should be able to annotate this. So up at the top, there should be an annotate function, and you can highlight the text and then click on the text and then add in the words that you decided in your groups.
The annotate is hidden in the view options right at the top of the screen in the center. If you drop that down, it's the 3rd option on that list.
There we go. I can hear some typing.
I've made a spelling mistake and I can't get it erased. I hate spelling mistakes. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. Where would we be without Word, where it kind of highlights things and I'm liking what's coming out here. So lots of shared values, shared aims and reasons for being in a community, being recognised as present, and connections, connectivity and diversity, interests and values. You feel you can be yourself. Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
This again is just something that I've discovered over the last few months, being able to separate it out. Okay, I wasn't sure how many groups we had. Susie, you're on mute.
There we go. Yeah, so I don't know, when I came back in, it put me on mute and it hid my chat. Right, all sorted now. Thank you. I didn't even notice. Yeah, so I was just saying, if anyone isn't able to type up, if they put it on the chat, but I think everyone does have the most recent version of Zoom. And I think for me, the opposite of sense belonging is sense of alienation, sense of loneliness, feeling left out. And I think, you know, that is something we need to be very aware with our students. We'll tell them to use this, but supposing someone didn't have the latest version of Zoom, or they didn't have the hardware that's supported, then that is a good way of alienating them and not letting them feel they belong. So that voice, being able to share your voice, I think to me is quite an important thing.
Okay, and it's interesting when we do this activity in terms of, you know, definitions of belongingness, it's the same words and the same ideas come out. So thank you all for participating.
We've got
in that.
One question from Hadis. Oh, we've got a couple of people. So now, as you may be aware, if you've done this sort of thing before, when you're sharing the screen, you can't see the chat. So Mandy can't see the chat at the moment. So Hadis is asking what we're using to let people write on the screen. And we are, yes, using the annotation function on Zoom, so that top thing. But we've also done it in Blackboard Collaborate. I'm trying to think if you can use it in Teams. I know Teams has added a whiteboard. So I'm finding that, you know, all the technologies at the moment, they are very responsive to what the public want. So Teams, for example, has just recently added breakout rooms. So things that we couldn't do before in one technology, we are increasingly able to. And Jane has confirmed that she can't annotate, and it might be that she's on the iPad version. And Hoda, you're right, not all students are comfortable with writing their ideas. Anonymity can help, and of course, you know, we broke you into those small groups so that you felt safer to share ideas and then have that scribe coming back. Yeah, and Jane, we've also found that the quieter students are finding their voice using chat, and Sonia's putting that we can use Google Docs too. Okay, thank you, Mandy.
So what we're going to do now is we will share a definition of belongingness that has come about with some of the work that Susie and I have been involved in and contributing to. Now I need to clear this, erase this. This is new. Susie, can you hit the eraser? Because I can only erase individual bits rather than full ones because I'm sharing the screen. There we go. Thank you.
I think someone else beat me to it. That's good.
Just it, we're all in it together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think we don't have to do that in Blackboard Collaborate, do we? We don't have to clear the screen. I think in Zoom we do. Yeah. So different technologies work slightly different ways. So this was a project that I co-led on with funding very generously from the QAA Scotland, who have an enhancement theme. They tend to change that every 3 years. Evidence for enhancement, and there was a call went out, and Susie Peacock and I responded to that because we were very interested in online sense of belonging. Quite a bit in the literature about sense of belonging for on campus, but not so much for online. And we work with some great colleagues from, I won't test you on the symbols of Napier, Highlands and Islands, Queen Margaret, Open University Scotland, and of course the University of Dundee. And it was a cross-sectorial project, and we've actually produced through Heather Gibson at the Open University Scotland a free resource through Open Learn Create, which we will share the link to later, that is presents the toolkit that we developed through the project.
Susie?
Okay, so a couple of definitions. Belongingness is being accepted, valued, included, and encouraged by others, teachers and peers in the academic classroom, of feeling oneself to be an important part of the life and activity of the class. And it's more than simply perceived liking or warmth. It also involves support and respect for personal autonomy and for the student as an individual. So that is from Goodnow, which I realise I misspelt in the abstract, so apologies for that. So are there words that resonate there with us? I think there are. The General Medical Council, the need to be connected to, cared for, and caring of others around us in the workplace, to feel valued, respected, and supported. And certainly those were things very much also coming up in your words. Someone it was actually my vicar giving a sermon the other week, and he was saying that he felt sense of belonging also extended to making others feel they belong. So that I think the GMC, you know, when it says caring of others around us, that draws on that as well. Okay.
Okay, and I guess in terms of, this is a good time to just even think, so, you know, we've talked about belongingness and what it means, but why might it be important for us to attend to this idea of belongingness in our students and also for our educators as well? And to start to think about, in the chat function, what sort of impact do you think that it might have on our students if we try to enhance belongingness in our student population or within our educators as well? Once we've got some comments in there. You see, I can't see the chat function. That'd be Susie and Sonia, but we can share some, share what's come out in the literature around this as well.
Yeah. So we've got increasing resilience, enhancing engagement and participation, enhancing motivation, question mark. Mm-hmm. Important for professional identity formation, absolutely, among learners and teachers. Enhanced belongingness equals enhanced engagement, question mark. Support of graduate attributes, accompanying students on their learner journey. Student well-being, enhances learning, role modelling alongside. Feel we're a community, that there's a community there to support us. Staff well-being, yes, because you know it's not just about our students, it's also about our faculty. If we collapse under the pressure, if we don't feel we belong, then that's not good for the student well-being as well. Acquisition of professionalism, so very much talking about that professional identity, and important for learner engagement in programme design and delivery, career enhancement, and reduces loneliness for students studying at home and staff working at home, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, so from the literature, very much part of the first part of the enhancement theme work was a detailed literature review. With increased feelings of belongingness comes identity formation, lifelong friendships, remembering back to, you know, when we were ourselves starting off at university, how we made our lifelong friendships there, engagement, maximizing learning in placements, for example, academic success, student retention, mental well-being. So we know that in higher education, quite rightly, academic success and student retention are very important things for us to be considering. So if sense of belonging has been shown to increase these, then we really do firmly believe that it's important that we have an understanding of how we promote sense of belonging. And now that we've pivoted to online, even more important that we understand what that means in the online context.
Okay, so what we want to do now is just to share with you what we do and bring in examples from our programme, from our Masters in Medical Education, and to consider if these could work in your context, or even tell us what you do in your context if you are entirely online or if you've had to go to blended learning, and yeah, and share top tips, I guess, with each other. The way that we've kind of focused is to look at our master's programme, but it's not to say that belongingness doesn't start much earlier than students starting on the programme. It can start during the admissions process, and it can also start, you know, during the induction process as well. But we're going to focus on the master's programme once they're within our course, and the sort of general considerations and challenges that we think about in terms of our online learners and trying to support that feeling of belongingness and trying to develop that community of learners online. And then an example and some examples of what we do at the beginning of modules, in the middles of modules and the ends of modules. So I think some of the general considerations that we try to take into account is creating a safe environment for learners, and learners knowing who to talk to if feeling lost. If they are not physically on campus, do they know where to go if they're struggling? Do they know who to speak to in terms of the library or student support? And I think along all of this is that communication is key. And when you're not getting the chance to speak to students in a face-to-face way, to be aware of tone or the lack of tone that is in written only communications. And again, just drawing on the work that that Peacock has been doing this year, is to, you know, this interaction and engagement, the culture of learning and support. So these are sort of general considerations that we have throughout our programme. What we do at the start in terms of building our modules and the design considerations that we have is we include activities where we can break people up into smaller groups. So for example, what we've done today with everyone here is thinking about the definitions, split people into groups of 5 or 6. It gives you the opportunity to meet others who are on this webinar, or if you're a student on a course, to meet your peers. We also set up activities in terms of discussion board groups. We have live classroom groups, but also some asynchronous work as well, and peer feedback groups as well, to try and just bring that sense of community in and the belongingness. Because our programme is part-time and we have students joining us from across the world, and also even within the UK, people are often working full-time, so depending on their shift patterns, we've tried to include any timing of kind of live activities or synchronous activities in a way that will maximise inclusiveness. So we won't have them always at, say, 9 o'clock in the morning. We might have them towards the end of the day as well, to try and make sure that a participant in the programme can at least try and attend one due to time zones, for example. And also to give spaces and there for socialising and networking with the students as well, so that it's not, it tries to remove that sort of didactic nature and allow the students to get to know their course mates as well as they would do on a face-to-face programme. And
we have a question here about the difference between discussion board groups and peer feedback groups, Mandy.
Yeah, with the peer feedback, we have, for example, I'm thinking about our curriculum planning module, we have a formative assessment sort of activity there where we divide, so we'll have we've got quite large numbers for some of the modules, so we split those into groups of 20 for the discussion boards, so that it's like a kind of a larger seminar group for the discussion board. But for peer feedback groups, we split that down further into triads, so that you get the chance to work with 2 of your peers much closely than you would do with maybe the larger group of 20 on top of the the full cohort, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we might especially use that with a formative assessment where we specifically want them to give and receive peer feedback there.
So yeah, at the start, we always have introductions, and again, it's just something that we kind of make explicit. We try and make it different for each module, and it's interesting as students progress through the programme, they start to even comment on the fact that in the discussion boards, they're recognising some familiar faces. As well as giving students the opportunity to introduce themselves. We introduce ourselves as well at the start of the module as the module team. I do that as part of a video, and I respond to the introduction boards if there's been any fantastic sharing of experiences so far. I also share some top tips from the last cohort to try and connect the students in with their peers that have come before them, and also in terms of if there's been any changes in response from students' feedback, again to try and let them know that what they say to us is important, especially with the evaluations. Like most face-to-face classes as well, we have ground rules, but how the ground rules will work specifically for the module. And in the last couple of years, as a module lead, I'll actually encourage WhatsApp group. But with these, it's with the caveat that there's no faculty involved. And that gives the students on the programme a chance to chat with each other in a more informal environment where there are no faculty there to sort of eavesdrop. And that seems to be working really well, because quite often there'll be somebody that will come back and say, this is what, we've had a discussion on the WhatsApp group and these are some of the kind of key queries. Can you bring those up in your weekly summary? I also tend to highlight the dates for the diary at that point, just to make sure that everybody is on track. It's also helpful at the beginning as well to keep an eye out on those who haven't engaged at all in the virtual learning environment. Now we can do that by pulling off reports in Moodle, but I think, regardless whether you're using Blackboard or Canvas, there will be a way to access that, so that can help flag up any students. And once we get going on each of the modules, again, I try to check in regularly and do news, updates, summaries, reflections. I use videos quite often, and here are a couple of screen grabs from videos or just pictures that I've sent up just to check in on everyone. I always say to try and respond in the discussion board questions in good time, but over the last 4 years as well, I think there's also a way of learning how quickly to respond as well. And sometimes I don't respond to questions immediately to give everybody a chance to start responding, so that sometimes other students will come on board and they will answer each other's questions. And again, I think that's a great opportunity for the students to then start to form and develop those relationships with each other. I always thank the students for the contributions and use their names just to try and encourage more contributions, because the discussion boards and the activities would be very quiet if our students didn't take part in them. And I think with all things is to try and keep things friendly. Mistakes happen, and again, this is just a clip from I can't remember the exact example, but obviously I've done something and I've said something that's not quite fitted in. So, and someone has highlighted it to me, which is always great. So I'm like, thank you for keeping me on track and picking that up. And then towards the end, I think again, it's just acknowledging their hard work. You would do that, you know, as you kind of come towards the end with your face-to-face students, and yeah, just acknowledge their hard work, ask for evaluations. But again, just similar to right at the start, where I shared the top tips from the previous cohort, it's almost a case of paying it forward and asking for their top tips for the next group that's going to join in. And of course, wish them well for the future modules as well, because I quite often come across the same students depending on which modules they take through their programme.
Yeah. And I think that top tips is really nice because, you know, a bit like looking at Lavin Wenger's work on community of practice, when you've gone from that, you know, that sort of outsider, that legitimized vicarious outside to learning the language and then to actually feel useful. And that's, you know, I remember belonging to when I was a programmer, an action script support group. And goodness me, the time when I could actually answer someone else's question or give top tips to the newbies, it gave me a real sense of belonging that, you know, I've never forgotten how I felt. And I remember I was doing my PhD at the time and my supervisor saying, well, why would you spend time? Where was the payback? And I thought, well, you know, it was that it was paying back all that help that everyone else had given me. So yeah, I think that's a really, as well as the usefulness of the fact that it shows that you are, you know, you're really engaged with the students there and realizing what they have to give. I think it does really also help them feel part of the of that bigger program in a really nice practical way.
So yeah, I think at this point it's just a case of sort of, well, we've shared with you some of what we do. Yeah, do you want to share with us what's worked for you, or is there anything you're thinking, actually, I might do that going forward? And yeah, please share with us in the chat function.
Well,
and
Susan has shared an example. Susan, would you like to come in and talk through that? And then we've also got a query from Kim.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
I run a master's in Glasgow, and in our first year, 2 of the summative assessments that we use are group assessments, and they're wikis. So in one of them, the students have to produce wikis about specific learning theories, which they're allocated. And in the other one, they have to produce a wiki about some specific assessment tool. And that requires them to work as a group. We allocate the groups randomly, about 3 or 4, and they therefore have to interact more closely with those people in their groups. And I mean, you mentioned WhatsApp, and they like using that, although we set up discussion forums for the group. They quite often use those a bit at the beginning, but then go to WhatsApp, and they continue the interaction because they have to peer assess and give feedback on 3 or 4 other wikis.
Yeah, see, again, it's sort of that, those sort of, yeah, great examples of how you can design your course in a way that allows those that have signed up to the participants to kind of work together and sort of then create those networks and those sense of belongingness. Thanks, Susan.
Yeah. Kim, do you want to come online with your question?
Yeah, thanks. It's just that what we're beginning to find is that although I think breakout rooms are great, we are finding that people use it as an opportunity to disappear off. So you'll have a group of people and then you go into the breakout rooms and there seem to be less people there than you thought. And then when you come back together again, sometimes there's even less people. And I think it's a lot easier to disengage. You just click a mouse and disappear. And it comes back to quite a lot of students don't like, I think the discussion was earlier about don't like having their videos on, and therefore will just use the chat function. And therefore, when they go to a breakout room, they usually have to have their videos on, and actually they can just disappear. And so I was just wondering what strategies or thoughts you have about that, or whether it's commonplace with you as well or others.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of approaches. When I was talking about the discussion boards, we tend to break the participant, the full class, into groups of 20, and we've found that that's almost been a bit of trial and error, because not all 20 participants will be active in the discussion boards. You'll have some people who are very quiet throughout the module, but we found that 20 seems to be enough for there to be a good discussion going on within the discussion board. Because I think if there's only maybe 1 or 2 comments, and then you find that as you progress through the module, people are starting to disengage. So I think it's trying to get that number right. With the live classrooms and the breakout groups, it's similar. Again, thinking about, okay, what is the ideal number? And there may be sort of 3 or 4 people who will be very active in those breakout groups, and others will maybe just be listening. And again, as a sort of top tip that we've shared with our students for the live classroom, sometimes it's not even a case that they don't want to put their cameras on, but maybe they can't, their cameras aren't working. So to try and come up with, in their small groups, you know, there's also the chat function as well as the audio function in the video, so that they can all contribute. But I guess it's just trying to get enough numbers in there so that, you know, if you have a small group of say 4 and 3 have gone off, and there's 1 person left there, then there's not much of a discussion group then, is there? So yeah, it's a challenge, Kim.
Yeah, Hoda's made the suggestion of allocating a role for each member of the small group to enhance and focus their minds on the activity. Yeah, and then, you know, bringing them back in, maybe using you know, some form of collecting feedback from them, you know, Mentimeter or something like that, to just try and get them back into the main room. But I think the question of whether students put their video on or not is a very interesting and potentially quite contentious one. We similarly find it difficult to get students often to put their videos on. And I was leading a discussion yesterday with our distance learning forum, which I co-chair, and someone was saying, well, you know, in the normal setting, we are inviting the students into the classroom, but when we're asking them to put their camera on, actually we're almost asking to come into their house. Now you'll notice that we've all got the ASME background on, but, you know, would that help in some way? I don't know. You know, could we encourage students to use a background? I don't know what, you know, what. And for different students, it's going to be different things that they don't like to put their camera on. And I know that Linda Jones was saying, you know, that sometimes culturally, you know, there was this, oh, well, I can't put my camera on because I'm not, you know, I'm not appropriately dressed for going for being visible. I didn't know you were going to ask me. So, you know, making sure that people understand whether there is going to be that expectation or not. But when it comes to, you know, whether we can demand it, I don't think we really can. But I always think it's nice to see people's faces. I mean, as you can tell from this, Mandy and I use a lot of humour, so we would never joke about, you know, two people about them not coming on, but, you know, just us being about humorous about how, well, you know, I'm putting my camera on now, even though my house is, you know, a bit of a state, or the dogs or the cat, you know, we have these noises off screen, like the Mandy's cat, and my dogs will be back from the dog walker, and I'm really hoping they don't come back before we've ended this. But that understanding that we're all working in very, very different situations. Yeah.
Is there anything else from the chats? Anybody else got any nuggets that they can share with us?
Oh, there's lots coming on in the chat now. Dependent on the situation, students are often in a live session of 250 plus. Absolutely. So I don't think we would put the cameras on. We, you know, as you saw from the beginning of ours, we asked for video and audio to be switched off for when in the big group. But yes, about the expectation when you're in a smaller group with patients, that you're smartly dressed, blur your background, expectations in different scenarios. Absolutely agree. I read somewhere on Twitter, he said his students, he found it a bit intimidating to take a class without being able to see the students, but it was their choice if they wanted to leave off their videos. About half of them immediately activated their videos. Yeah, because they appreciated he was a person. So saying, yeah, exactly that. And I know on Blackboard Collaborate, you know, they can be put into a sort of classroom setting, like they're all sitting in a lecture theatre. So yes, I mean, Mandy and I are always very honest with our students, and you know, if you are feeling a bit lonely, I think again there's no harm in actually saying that, reaching out. They maybe don't want to put their camera on at the beginning until they really know the tutor, so there's that safety, feeling relaxed, and getting the students to put their cameras on can feel quite intrusive. Some students won't be able to do this. Absolutely. Some students don't have a camera. You know, if they've got an old desktop, they might not have a camera. Some having the options is advised. Set the expectations at the beginning. Students not switching cameras on for us are tending to be students who similarly tend to be quieter in the face-to-face sessions. Yeah, it can be difficult for us educators delivering a lecture, not being able to see anyone, as this has been part of the reason for educators feeling isolated themselves. Yeah.
And I remember, yeah, I mean, at the start, when I started doing summary recordings, and it would just be me doing a recording, and I'd have my, you know, have my video at the top, and I'd be going through things. But I think then I got feedback, you know, towards the end or in the course evaluation, saying that the students really found them helpful. And even though I wasn't presenting any new information, I was just summarising and moving, you know, kind of keeping that sort of momentum going through the module. That then gave me that sort of, you know, oomph to kind of, yes, okay, it's appreciated, I'll keep going with that, because it can be a little bit off-putting when you're thinking, okay, I know I've got so many participants in this module, and and they're not, yeah, I can't see them, so I don't know if they're listening, I don't know if they're finding this useful. I'm not getting that feedback like you would if you were actually standing at the front of a class.
Okay.
Okay, so I think is this us naturally coming towards the end? So now that we've got the hang of this annotating, do you want to share with us how you're feeling now? Has it changed from the start of this webinar? And you can click on the draw. There's also stamps as well.
I've also just shared in the chat another example of a slide for students or indeed faculty to say how they're feeling. So that was one that my colleague Jordan Napier shared with us yesterday. How are you feeling? But yes, we're still on the Lego.
I know we have the jelly bean tree as well. So we have this big tree with lots of jelly bean characters and various things as well. And that's quite helpful in terms of just checking in with students and see how they're feeling, or staff, if we're doing a faculty development session.
Yeah. And I'm also going to share the link of the toolkit that we developed.
I've got that at the end anyway.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, but I think they won't be able to copy it, will they, from the slide?
Hmm.
Someone's found the stamp, lots of hearts. Anyone got any final questions or comments they'd like to make?
Okay.
I'd just like to add thank you for you both presenting such an interesting session. Thank you to everyone for engaging and being part of our community. It's made it a really interesting and lively session. There's certainly things that I'll be stealing from the chat function for sure. And I'd also just like to thank Tyler and Lee from ASME, who've been in the background making sure that everything works the way it should.
Yes, thank you guys.
So this we took from the London. London has some fantastic resources, their Centre Distance Education, and the first 5: be realistic, be professional, listen to your learners, reuse material, get help. And then I added the one, be kind to yourself. As faculty, we have to be kind to ourselves. Things go wrong. Try, however you're feeling, to have a little bit of a laugh about it with your students. Reach out to them. Show them you are a human being. We're all human beings. We are all working as hard as we can. Be kind to ourselves. And if you just flick to the previous one, Mandy, because we do like to also point out things that we've maybe not got quite right. I loved this slide, and then my assessment guy said, oh, you really need to put that in a more accessible font. Go to the next slide, please, Mandy. So this is why it's now in a more accessible font. Okay.
So I don't know if there's any additional questions that we've not picked up on. Again, it was just to return to what we set out to do at the start. And also, if you are interested in having a look at the toolbox that we were talking about, because we've just shared what we've been doing as well, but there's actually even more resources in the toolkit from all the different contributors. So yeah, feel free to have a look in there and see what you can use in your own context. Still got the stars.
I know. There, I can also copy the enhancement theme link. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed myself, and the comments have been absolutely great. And I do remember reading once, I think it was from the then called HEA, students will forgive you everything apart from being boring and running over. And I think our timekeeping has been impeccable, and I've certainly found it really interesting. So I hope everyone else has. And thank you for your contributions.